This is the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk on every team in the NHL.
Hey, sports fans, Christmas is come and gone and the Super Bowl is quickly approaching. We've seen what our teams are capable of this year, and now it's time to get those last bets in before the big Super Bowl. Will the Ravens be able to get it done? Will Brady and the Patriots get themselves another ring? I bet you have a feeling. Head over to mybookie.ag and make your predictions a reality. MyBookie is one of the most trusted in the industry. If you're looking for a sports book to make your bets for the bowl games, MyBookie is where you want to go. Football not your thing? No worries. MyBookie's got it all. From NBA to NHL to Premier League, they have the fastest payouts, best promotions, and very helpful 24/7 customer service. You could even pool your bets together for bigger payout. Let's say you have a couple big favorites this week. Parlay those wagers. You can bet multiple games together, and if they come through, you win big. MyBookie has more lines, better odds for the player than any other sports book out there. If you join now, MyBookie will match your deposit halfway, all the way up to $1,000, which means if you deposit $200, you'll get an extra $100 in free play money for free. All you have to do is use a promo code THPN to activate the offer. Once again, that promo code is THPN to get extra cash from MyBookie. Bet, win, get paid. Calgary Flames fans, it's time for Flames Unfiltered. Entertaining and controversial hockey talk with your host, Brad Baroud. That was a quick road trip. 2 wins, 4 points, undefeated this decade. Are we playing good? Still feels like something's missing. Good evening and welcome to Flames Unfiltered. Episode 30, recorded on January 8th, 2020. Still seems weird to say that. I am the host of the show, Brad Baroud. Thanks for joining us, Flames fans. It is a good day in Calgary as we lock up a future number one defenseman in Calgary today. We'll talk about that on the show. That just dropped just a couple hours ago. But anyways, quick road trip. Dad's trip, 2 wins. Hell, let's keep these guys all year. We keep winning. I did hear a rumor that the moms are going to get bumped next year for the dads again. I'm sure that'll go over well. Anyways, that's awesome that NHL teams do that and that Calgary does that. And I'm sure the players had a blast, and I'm sure the dads had probably more of a blast. Well, the question is now, after 3 wins in a row, can we continue the success? Can we come back home now tomorrow night, Thursday night, and rattle off 2 more points against a Minnesota Wild team? Is anybody else aggravated that we're playing Minnesota again? 3rd time in 2 weeks. And they're like, they're like the boringest team to play. Not that I want run and gun bad defense or anything like that. But it's just, everybody has those teams you just hate playing. And we seem like we struggle against Minnesota. Now we just got a shootout win the other night. But they're just a team that just a kind of a thorn in our side. And I just hope we can get by tomorrow night with a couple points. So, what else do we got to talk about? Well, we better talk about Saturday night. It's round 2 of the Battle of Alberta. Why do I have trouble saying that? I always have trouble saying that. It's so stupid. Round 2 of the Battle of Alberta. It's in Calgary this time, not in Edmonton. And so Saturday night's going to be an intense one. I just got a feeling there's going to be a little bit more grit and a little bit more fire that night. I pray it's not a sleeper like the last Battle of Alberta. That would really piss me off. But I guess we'll see. Looking forward to a good one on Saturday night, but we can't overlook Thursday on the way. On today's show, we're going to recap the 2-1 win in Chicago, talk about the Flames inking Rasmus Andersson to a long-term contract, and then it's the Battle of Alberta round 2 of the Roundtable with Jon Boutin and Kyle Brandt from the Oil Country podcast, which is featured on the Hockey Podcast Network. We'll go through some Flames news, have a fan question, and we'll preview the Minnesota game on Thursday and Saturday night's big battle of Alberta.
Every team, everywhere. The Hockey Podcast Network.
Hey, the Hockey Podcast Network is a great source for your hockey podcast. 31 teams, 2 podcasts a week. How can it get any better? They've also got a great podcast out called Tales with TR, a hockey podcast, which features former National Hockey League player, and he says every episode, first-round draft pick, Terry Ryan. He is entertaining as can be. You've heard him on Spittin' Chicklets. Now you can listen to him on the Hockey Podcast Network.
Every team, everywhere. The Hockey Podcast Network.
Hey, Calgary 2-1 over Chicago on Tuesday night. Solid game from the boys. 3 wins in a row. I'm starting to feel a little bit better. I think I sound a little more positive, don't I? Tell you what, it wasn't a great start. First period didn't look so hot. Got things going in the second period and really dominated the Hawks in the second. Outchanced them 15-8. Lindholm was amazing. And you know what? I'll give it to the defense. I think about every player on the defense had a few moments during the game. But you know what? As a whole, with the help of the wingers and centers, they were able to shut down Kane and Taves. And you have to do that with Kane. Kane had 4 points last time Calgary played them on New Year's Eve. And, you just can't do that. First period, though, Chicago did get on the board first when Kubalik scored his 13th at the 1928 mark late in the period on a redirection that got past goaltender Cam Talbot. Second period, Lindholm, 17th of the year, 14 seconds into the period, and you just knew it was going to be a good period. You just did. It just started off, and I'm like, here we go. That was his 17th of the year. At the 16:01 mark, he got a second from Tkachuk. Tkachuk's 23rd assist. Lindholm shot in the second period. You need to go on Flames.com and watch this, or YouTube or wherever. It is a rocket right into the corner, dinging a couple posts. Beauty shot. Big 2 points for the Flames. Things are kind of starting to roll a little bit in Calgary. As things getting better, I'm feeling a little more confident.
NHL news, opinions, and controversy.
All right. Big news today in Calgary. Big news. When I saw it, I was like jumping for joy. Doesn't get any better. Calgary Flames ink Rasmus Andersson to a long-term contract. Man, I thought we were going to have to worry about this summer. It's a 6-year contract extension, 4.55 AAV per year. That is a hell of a bargain for a right-handed defenseman. 23 years old, 6'1", 214, a 2015 draft pick, second rounder of the Calgary Flames. Yep, Vancouver was a draft pick we got for Sven Barchi. Don't forget that, Vancouver fans. Always fun to poke the bear when we can, huh? I think Rasmus Andersson is top-line defensive capabilities for the future here. Heck, future right now. He has been paired with Giordano this year. He's also been paired with either Stone or Shillington on that third pairing. Has had a strong year. Great puck-moving defenseman. Strong on the boards. Wins battles down low. 5 goals this year. 26 assists. 31 points. A +4 in 45 games this season. Man, this is a team-friendly contract. And what this can do, though, is it can solidify the Flames' back end for the next 6 years. Along with some help, obviously. We're going to need some more guys. But what else it'll do is it'll help open up some cap space this summer and allow us to get either Hamonic or Brody, or who knows, both of them under contract again and really create. I mean, imagine this defense, with the future. I think Shillington's going to be a key part. I think Yusuf Alimaki's definitely going to be a key part. Now you got Rasmus Andersson signed for 6 years. Man, I don't know. Honestly, I don't even know what the news in Calgary could have been better than this today. This is a big signing that everybody in Calgary should be happy with.
Inside Edge Hockey News. Bringing you inside the game.
All right, time for a great roundtable. It's our second of the year, our second Battle of Alberta roundtable, featuring Jon Boutin, Kyle Brandt from the Oil Country Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's our pleasure as well. It's always good to, like you said, talk that big Battle of Alberta coming up and hoping for a better result compared to the first one, that's for sure.
I'll take the 2 points, but I'm hoping for a little bit more. You know what? Why do I say that? Because I don't want you guys to beat us or to be a close game, but I do want a little bit of that grit and that fire that we lacked in the first game.
Sorry for myself, Brad. Just good to see you. But that last game, the Oilers just couldn't come out of that Christmas break with any fire, apparently, because it was one-sided for sure. So hopefully with the Oilers' effort that they put in here over the last week and a half, we can hopefully see a actual Battle of Alberta, because it would be nice to see some emotion in that game, right?
I think we will. I do. I think Edmonton's playing. Actually, I've watched a couple of your games lately, and I think you guys look really good now. And not that you didn't earlier in the year, but every team goes through their ebbs and flows and their hiccups. And I think we kind of caught you on a good night. And I don't know, you probably played your worst game of the month that night.
Debatable.
And we kind of caught you on. Well, you guys probably remember. I could probably be like, oh, the Flames were horrible on this date, and this date. So I'm sure you guys remember them a little bit more than I do. But anytime I turn the scoreboard on, I see Edmonton's losing, I kind of chuckle a little bit. But
we're doing the same. Believe me, don't worry. That goes both ways for sure. But
and I hope it does. That's
without a doubt. I mean, that's part of the competitive rivalry, right? But no, Edmonton had a really rough, full month of December and last kind of 10 days of November. So I don't even know. I'd have to go back if that was our worst game. It was, of recent memory, it was the one that stung the most. That's for sure. But I think that's more just the geographical ties to it more so than anything.
I doubt it was your worst, and I know it wasn't well, you know what? Honestly, sadly, that might have been our best outing of the night.
Yeah.
I mean, of the year, because it was a fairly complete 60 for us, and we have not had that.
It was completely, and I mean, part of it is like like I said, the one team kind of showed up and one team didn't, right? So it's always nice to be that fan of the team that shows up, but. Yeah, like we've said several times here, hoping for a better, more competitive showing. But yeah, you can't complain too much about the 2 points, though. I mean, I'm fine if Calgary doesn't want to show up on Saturday. I'll take a blowout win, no problems at all.
I'm actually a little worried about it because I don't know. Calgary's won 3 in a row, but they've been the most humdrum, non-emotional wins ever. But then I also have to look and be like, okay, we played Minnesota, who's a boring team to play and watch. And then we played Chicago, who's, I don't know, a little more entertaining than Minnesota, but still is a team that, is a lockdown team because they have to be. And I'm honestly, I've been impressed with Chicago of late, but I don't know. Our Flames are back home tomorrow night, Thursday night against Minnesota. And then, we welcome you guys to the Saddle Dome on Saturday night.
I guess my question for you would be, and for Flames fans too who don't know, like the difference between the last game between us, right? We've added Kyler Yamamoto to our lineup. We've brought him up from the AHL, and he's been a huge impact for our roster and a big reason of why we've been able to get a few points here strung together over these past games. Has your roster changed any more since the last time we've seen you? Has Majapane, sorry if I'm butchering that name,
Majapane,
has he continued to be a force like he was in the game against us, or was that kind of a one-time show off for him?
I wouldn't say it was a one-off for him. He had a good stretch for 2 weeks where he really played well, and he's been up on the first line with Lindholm and Tkachuk. As of the last couple games, he struggled a little bit. He hasn't been horrible, but struggled a little bit. Found himself slipped down to our third line last night. I got a feeling he'll move back up into that first line spot, but he hasn't been clicking at the at the pace he was during that point. That definitely was one of his better games of the year. As far as other roster moves, David Rittich has not played well for us as of late. He's had a couple real tough starts here the last few games. And Cam Talbot has got the last 2 starts and been pretty darn impressive. And I'm really interested to see, who gets the go tomorrow night and who gets the go in net on Saturday night. There's a lot of debate going on in Calgary on, who should get that start.
That's surprising to hear because Rittich has basically been, as far as I've known, a lot of your team, right? Like he's basically been the all-star of your team. He's quite been incredible.
We wouldn't be close to a playoff spot if it wasn't for him the first 2 months. But his last, really since about probably the last 6 starts he's had, I wouldn't say they were bad. He just looked a little out of sorts. The last 2 games, he spotted the opponents 3 goals to start. So we were down 3-0. And one of the 2, he was yanked. The other one, they fought through and almost came back to beat Chicago that day or that New Year's Eve game, but didn't. But he just looks a little out of sorts. And I don't know if he's fatigued. He played a lot early in the year, or if, I don't know a goalie out there that doesn't go through some tough stretches. And
for sure,
without a doubt.
I think every Canadian market's the same. When your goalie has a little bit of a struggle, it's really quick to hit the panic button, which kind of pisses me off. But it's crazy in Calgary right now how many people are like, oh, we just don't worry about Rittich. Let's play Talbot, which Talbot's been really good lately. And he's getting some run support now, so that kind of helps his numbers. But and I actually, if I was coaching, I would probably go with Talbot tomorrow night. I think I would, because I think you ride the hot hand. But I would hope they would sit down with Rittich and say, hey, dude, you're our number 1. And you're going to be our number 1. We're just going to give you some rest, play the hot hand. We'll be back to you. Don't worry. It's just weird. It's a weird situation.
I think especially right now too in the NHL, it's kind of a weird in between of there being like an actual starter goalie on a team and there being a 1A, 1B situation, right? So, that hasn't been a concrete thing over the whole NHL. So in a situation like Calgary where Rittich is very obviously the starting goalie, right? Like I would take that same approach where I would probably be starting Talbot tomorrow, but at the same time giving my confidence to Rittich and be reassuring him that, hey man, no matter what, like I want you to just be mentally okay and everything. I want you to tell me when everything is fine, and if you feel okay to go this weekend, then good. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough situation, right? But he has been a lot of your team. So to see him kind of fall out of favor, is tough, right? And especially as we talked last episode, sorry to keep ranting, but yeah, like having this battle in between Edmonton and Calgary is important, right? Like I want to see you guys succeed as much as you want to see us succeed.
Really?
I do. At least as much as it's competitive between us, right? Like
I'd love to see.
I want to see a Battle of Alberta playoff series.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
it.
Yeah. Like I don't want you to succeed, but if I have to watch you succeed, it was pretty late in the last few years having to watch a Battle of Alberta when you guys were irrelevant and we were irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah.
And now that both teams have some relevancy, it's a lot more fun. I still don't want you guys to win, but I want the relevancy, if that
for
makes
sure.
sense.
Games where fans were showing up with paper bags on their heads and whatnot.
Like,
right?
I'm with you guys, right? Like it's one of those things that like, yeah, you want to beat the Calgary Flames. Or
I don't want you to win the Stanley
Cup. Oilers, but yeah, you don't.
I don't want you to win the Stanley Cup.
I want us to have fun, basically. Yeah.
So just backtracking here slightly, guys. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the goalies because I was actually having an interesting conversation with my dad yesterday, and it was not that they're identical, but looking at Cam Talbot and David Rittich's numbers, it's interesting because obviously in a smaller sample size for Talbot, but he does have the better numbers as far as the goals against and save percentage, but the win-loss is much worse. And that's something that's always kind of intrigued me, and especially as of like looking at our teams this year, it has, where you see the same thing. I mean, Koskinen started off, I think 7-1, and Smith was hot as well, but he didn't have the win-loss record that Koskinen did. And it is interesting looking at those goalies where I don't know if it's a mental thing or if it's just a fluke.
Or the team playing in front of them.
Exactly, right? Like it's one of those things like if you're you look at the win-loss, and that really doesn't even tell a large percentage of the story, because I mean, if Talbot's in and your team's only scoring 2 goals a night and he's at letting in 2.6 on average, of course he's going to lose more than he wins. And then obviously the flip with Rittich if he's getting more of that support. But, and like I did say, it is a smaller sample size for Talbot, but it's always interesting to me to just kind of see, like, who do you start, right? Rittich has the most wins and he's been your guy. But as far as strictly goalie numbers and stopping the puck, Talbot's been the superior goalie this year in about 50% of the games.
What's funny is at the beginning of the year when we had Talbot and Rittich both signed, Talbot to a 1-year deal, Rittich to a 2-year deal, everybody was like, all right, we want, like, if I could write a script, we want Rittich to be our number 1 guy, but we want Talbot to be really good. Well, that's kind of what we have now. And now people are like, we have a goalie controversy. It's like, well, wait a second. This is what we wanted. So I think this is a good thing for Calgary. I think you just let Talbot play some, let Rittich get some rest, and then see how it all pans out. One thing that I'm interested kind of to see, and just going to back to the Edmonton Calgary thing, is Smith was our goalie last year. Talbot was yours. Do we want to see them play against each other Saturday night? Do we want that?
Yeah. I was just about to go there, Brad, too. Like, for one, I'd love to get a first shot goal against Calgary. So Talbot in is the best chance that that's going to happen. While we're on that topic, sorry, just a little bit of a chirp.
I want a goalie fight.
Oh my God. Well, Smith will dominate.
I'll take Mike Smith 100% of the time. Yeah.
Not even a fight. Yeah.
I know, but
and I am a fan of Talbot.
We'd have to have a third man in.
All of a sudden, Lucic and Neil get in on that too. There
exactly, right? Yeah.
But I've got to ask Brad, and sorry if this is kind of a curveball or off the top of your head question, but has Talbot let in first shot goals? Because that was, it was more of just kind of a voodoo freak thing, but that happened a lot in Edmonton and with him in net.
I can't remember if it was, you know what? I think it was, honestly, this sounds sad, but I think it was the first game he let in his first shot. Mm-hmm. First or second shot. And I think it happened in his third or fourth start, but it hasn't happened since.
Right.
Smith was notorious for us last year on that one too. I can't say it's a problem now.
And it might just be more of an indication of kind of one team not really showing up defensively in front of them, right? Like, I remember Talbot letting in some soft goals early, but I also remember him getting hung out to dry on the first shot too sometimes. So it is tough to say, but I couldn't resist throwing in that little bit of a jab there.
Isn't it kind of funny, though, how we forget? Because, like, 3 years ago, I mean, Talbot was the man in Edmonton. Like, he was like the man. You guys were like, all right, we found our goalie forever. Yep. And then just 2 years later, it's like, all right, we're going to kick this guy to the curb. And I'm not taking a stab at Edmonton by saying that. I mean, a lot of teams do that. But goaltending is a goofy ass position. And I think there's, organizations need to be patient and kind of, roll with it a little bit more sometimes than just pulling the plug right away. And this is coming from a Calgary fan, but I think you guys are awfully critical of Koskinen just because he got the stupid contract right away. I think that's been held against him.
It has, without a doubt. And I mean, I know you're saying you guys as in like the Oilers fan base. Because at the start, like, I look at Koskinen. I don't know if we talked about this on our last kind of collaboration there, but I kind of looked at Koskinen where he had a really good run at the start of last year where we were looking at this goalie that, random guy that we signed from Europe. And he did have a really good run, especially when Talbot was struggling, right? And then towards the end of the season, especially after Talbot got traded and we had Stolars as our backup goalie who, honestly, the Oilers clearly had no motivation to play whatsoever. They were probably going to let him go, which they did. And I think he played 22, 23 games in a row. And you look back to him in the KHL, and Koskinen had only played, I think, 52, 53 games in his highest played season. So a lot of it's workload, but I agree. I think a lot of the Oilers fan base is overly critical of Koskinen. And I mean, our defense has been better this year. And I'm curious if Kyle has a different opinion here at all. But at the end of the day, like, the Oilers have not been known for their defensive play, right? And we're kind of known for crucifying goalies. You look back to Devin Dubnyk, and I mean, we just about wrecked that kid's career. And the Oilers kind of mismanaged him, but the Oilers fan base, did not like
Arizona.
He's a young goalie.
They did
right?
their job on him too,
for sure. So, and I mean, he rebounded, which is awesome to see. But it is one of those things that, I mean, I think we are kind of notorious as a fan base of kind of crucifying those goalies. When you look, and if you really looked at the details and watch all the games, they're not really put in a huge position to succeed, right? And Koskinen, I mean, I've really, other than the odd game, I've had no complaints about him this year. He's been rock solid for us, and it's nice to see, Smith has gotten the last 4 starts, and we've gotten 7 of our 8 points there, and he's starting to rebound. But as Flames fans very well know, he's wildly inconsistent too, right? So seems to be on a bit of a hot streak, but getting back to Koskinen, yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the way he's played this year.
John, if there's I'll agree with you, but if there's one thing I'll actually hate on Oilers fans for, it's not that they just crucify goaltenders. They do it to any player, right?
For sure.
Nurse is blamed it. Nurse,
you get the scapegoat.
and for sure, any fan base will, for sure, right? Nurse has been on the chopping block this year. In the past, it's been Eberle or Hall or whoever, right? There's always a player that's just public enemy number one, right? I think almost any Canadian market is pretty bad at doing
you get that
right?
Fishbowl effect, for sure.
So Nurse is your guys' whipping boy right now? Is that for real?
Yeah, I would say recently it's been him. Yeah. I don't think we really have a forward that could be responsible to take that kind of negativity, right? There's been not enough hate. We don't have the roster to hate on a forward, right? So the defense that's been lacking, it's true, right? We don't have the roster. I see you laughing right now, but we don't have the roster.
We have a whipping boy on forward and we have a whipping boy on defense.
But Nurse has had to fill in a lot of roles, right? And I've personally been responsible for talking down on him, and he does have a lot of faults. Honestly, he's a great top 4 defenseman, but he's not a great top 2 defenseman, right? But that doesn't take away from the player that he is. Our fan base just likes to tear apart a player more than what they are, right?
Kyle, if I can interject there just very briefly. It's funny because at the start of the year, Matthew Benning was our whipping boy. He was our 3rd pairing right-hand D, and he was our whipping boy. And then he gets hurt with back-to-back concussions. I believe. I know the second injury was a concussion. He came back in his first game and got hit with a puck, and he's looking at coming back on Thursday. But anyways, as soon as the Oilers lost him, they went on a terrible drought through the end of November and December. And then you look at, fans start looking at the plus minus of Matt Benning, and they're like, oh, we can't wait till Matt Benning's back. And I'm looking on Twitter, what the fuck, guys? I literally saw that exact account 2 weeks ago, ripping on Matt Benning, saying he was the reason why we were losing all these games.
In Calgary, last year we ripped on Sam Bennett all year, and TJ Brody. They were just the whipping boys. And this year it's been Mark Jankowski, which that's pretty obvious, but he's been public enemy number 1. And then we ripped on TJ Brody until he had a seizure and fell to the ice at practice. And now nobody says anything bad about TJ
Sorry,
Brody.
I need to laugh. That's a terrible situation.
It's horrible, and I'm so thankful he's okay, for sure. But it kind of shows how silly all of us are as fans in the fact that it's all of a sudden it's we can't stand this guy, and then he has a serious medical issue, and now it's we feel so bad for him. Now we're just going to give him
the whole pass.
I mean, we're okay with him now, and now it's just all on Jankowski. Jankowski's house must get egged every day in Calgary, every day.
It's weird, just talking about the Canadian markets. I mean, we just played Toronto, so obviously going into that McDavid media frenzy. And it is, as much as it's awesome, you see a lot of Canadian players that you look at them and they're think about playing for your hometown or a Canadian team. That'd be wicked. But at the same time, you put yourself in their position, and it's if you're anybody in a Canadian market, you can't go to the corner store and get a bottle of milk without someone noticing you, right? And at the end of the day, I do kind of feel bad for them, but at the same time, they also get the bonuses of playing in front of, 18,000 fans every night compared to other cities in the States that don't get that privilege. So,
I have a friend of mine that played in the National Hockey League, and he was drafted and played in Calgary for up and down between the AHL, St. John, and Calgary for 4 years. And then he went on to Carolina, Philadelphia, and LA. And he told me that the players, when they lived in Calgary, if you had a good game and stuff, like people would mow your yard for you. And if you had a bad game, that, it would be awful. And he told me that when he lived in Carolina, his neighbor didn't know that he played pro hockey for the first year that they lived next door to each other. So it's,
it's just a different environment, right? And they have so many other sports, but yeah, it's crazy.
It's a different thing, but.
And I mean, it's one of those things too. You can't, I've had, like, I don't mean to look down on any fans that I disagree with their opinions, right? Because I guarantee I've had some stupid opinions before. I was mad about the Draisaitl pick. Look foolish about that, 5-6 years later. So it is one of those things that everybody thinks they're in the know all the time, and you get loud about it. So you've got to kind of give them a pass. But sometimes I just see stuff on Oilers or Flames or Toronto Twitter or whatever.
Or Vancouver.
Like, oh man. Yeah. Vancouver's real bad too.
Vancouver's the worst. Let's be honest, man. Let's just agree, as a duo of provincial friends.
Toronto has the volume, so they almost get a pass, because it's like when you have that many fans, of course there's going to be a high number of stupid ones. But yeah, you look at Vancouver.
I just want to call it the Vancouver Podcasters. That's the only reason I said that.
All they care about is face-off or something.
Vancouver, they're. I have a really good friend that's a Canucks fan, and I'm not just speaking about him on this. This is all Vancouver fans. They live for the day. If their team played good that day, they are winning the cup. And if they have a night like they had last night, which was hilarious.
Oh man, they're over their team.
They were pissed off last night. They were like, this is the end of time. And it's like, come on, it's one
trade Pedersen,
game.
Trade Besser, trade.
it's one game. Markstrom has got them so many points this year, and last night he wasn't good, and that's okay. But they just don't get. I don't know, man. Their Twitter page was ridiculous.
Sorry, I don't want to get into that, but just to give credit to that team as well. Like Markstrom as a goalie, I feel is very similar to Riddick for your team. He's a goaltender he's
better.
Yeah, but I mean that he doesn't have the credit throughout the league so far, right? Like they're both very good goaltenders that are kind of just undersung so far. But yeah, I think Markstrom definitely probably has the higher level.
Do you guys think that comparing Calgary and Edmonton, and we should probably get off the goaltender topic, but we'll end it with
That's
this.
Okay. Next episode, we'll talk about something else, man. We're going to be back.
Next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Don't you guys think, though, that when I look at Calgary's goaltending duo and I look at Edmonton's, it's the same thing.
It is.
You guys plucked Koskinen out of nowhere. Nobody knew who the hell he was. We plucked Riddick out of nowhere. No one knew who the hell he was. And then we had Smith and you had Talbot, which are both can be great and can suck really bad. And then we just traded them. And then, we're in the same boat.
It's a very similar situation for sure.
And where do you think we'll go with it? Where do you guys see Edmonton's goaltending 2 years from now, and where's Calgary's going to be 2 years from now?
I don't know about 2 years from now. So you look at Kyle Koskinen's got 3 years left, correct? Sorry, blanking
3 years. And as for prospects, we don't really have much. We were hoping that the prospect we picked in what was the second or early third round this year, right?
Well, you've got Skinner, Wells, Rodriguez, and Konovalov. Sorry to throw random names, but they were all not Wells, but the other three were third or fourth round picks earlier in the last three drafts.
Does it matter though?
No, but I'm just saying, there's nobody that's been a highlight goaltender, right?
No,
they're all
Spencer
just kind of
there's no future Carey Price,
hopefully one of them shows up. Yeah,
we got that Wolf kid that played for Team USA and plays in, is it Everett?
Oh, I think for goalies, it doesn't even matter where they're picked, right? You can pick a goalie in the 6th, 7th round or someone in the 2nd round or unless it's a Spencer Knight or Marc-Andre Fleury or Carey Price where they're literally a fucking generational goalie talent.
Yeah, for sure.
Carter Hart.
Yeah,
right. It's not a thing. You're fucking rolling a dice.
And you said, Brad, where you were kind of talking about just how every goalie goes through bad stretches. And me and Kyle have said it many times on our podcast that goalies are voodoo. I'm not going to be the podcaster that looks at this and is I'm some goaltender evaluator, because you look at all of them. I mean, I just watched a Red Deer Rebels game back with my family last week around New Year's. And I watch the goalies in junior and I'm like, yeah, they're both pretty good. But like me trying to evaluate those guys to say like, oh yeah, that guy's a future NHL starter. It's impossible from a fan and a podcaster's perspective. And not to say that the more goalie scouts in the NHL are on our level by any means, but I still think there's a huge amount of discrepancy even for those guys, right? You just don't know how they're going to develop. They take way longer. So it's one of those things where it's like you almost need, if you really wanted a good evaluation on goalies, you almost need to say, hey, you can't draft 18-year-old goalies. You've got to wait till they're 21, then we'll draft goalies, right? Because they take so long.
It does. It's so hard.
You're saying like most of those scouts, like as we know, right, like are way more advanced than we'll ever be in watching the game of hockey, right? So they know those players and the way that they play. They know, like, obviously they're looking for the way they play positionally. And I think like as a goaltender, positional hockey and the way that you learn from a coach are probably the two most important aspects at that age, right? Like your ability to grow and learn. So like there's kind of I think a lot of more personal things that you're scouting more than their actual play, right? Like although that can be obviously like very important, but yeah, a goaltender I think is a lot harder to read. Just like a defenseman is a lot harder to read on their growth potential than a forward will be, right? There's just a lot of maturity that's shown in their game, a lot of mental kind of ownership of themselves that has to grow personally, right? To be a good player. So yeah, it's a hard position to scout, and it's something that really I don't think will ever be like a bread and butter. That person is going to be good.
So is Mike Smith on your roster next year?
Probably not, depending on who we can pick up. Yeah, I don't think it'll be one of our internal players that comes up unless they like start showing up over the second half of the AHL here.
We were really high on Starrett last year, who was in the AHL, but the Bakersfield Condors also had a really good season, one of their best seasons last year, and they're struggling this year. And part of that is, you look at the NHL roster, and we started out, we took Ethan Bear, then we took Caleb Jones, and now we've taken Yamamoto. So they've lost a lot of big impact players there. But the goalies are struggling down there too. You looked at Starrett, he had a great year last year, and you looked at him like maybe he's an NHL backup. Maybe he even is a late bloomer and develops into a starter. But it's so hard, like we've all been saying with goalies. I mean, to answer your original question there with what the goaltending situation looks like, and with Smith next year, I mean, I think Smith really depends on, and it's kind of a cop-out of the answer, but how does the rest of the season go, right? Like if he turns a corner and gets hot, yeah, I think there's a chance he comes back as a 1B. If I was going to bet on it, I would say no. I think they probably explore, particularly because the Oilers will have a lot more cap space this season, and they'll also have a better understanding of where Koskinen's at, right? Like, is this our guy and we're going for a legit backup that we're going to pay $1.5 million? Or is he just a 1A and we need to go out and pay $2 to $4 million for another goalie?
I don't know. I think that, maybe I'm being crazy here, but I think you guys have Smith again next year, and I think we have Talbot again next year. I do. I do.
And maybe.
And I think it would be good for both of us to be honest with you. I think it would probably be safe for both of us.
You see Smith, and I mean, he's been inconsistent, but he's also had his highs with the lows. So, I mean, that's not the worst thing in a backup goalie, right? Like if Koskinen can be that guy that plays 55 games a year or 50 games a year, you saw through December, I think Koskinen had 9 straight starts, and Smith, like before that, they were really going 2 games, right? And then you see the team struggling. We had one of the worst month of the year. And then Smith gets his chance, and now he's playing very well again, right? So, but yeah, I think it's still very much up in the air as far as if Smith comes back. And I, like you said, I mean, with saying that you think Talbot and Smith are going to be back next year for the respective teams, I mean, I put it at 40%, right? Because you look at that free agent market as far as those, tier 3 and tier 4 goalies, it's really a crapshoot, right? Like maybe you're going to get a guy that rebounds, or maybe you're going to get a guy that comes in and he's not an NHL goalie anymore, right? So time will tell, and I know that's a cop-out, but
it might come down to value because both teams want to have cap space available for other things. So it might come down to the guy they feel is the best value for the month. I mean, it really...
For sure. And John, like you said too, right? Like how many of those goalies have we seen over the past couple of years that just show up for a year or two and then disappear? right?
For sure.
So maybe one of our goalies is that goalie for the next season or two, and then it just falls off the face of the earth. Yeah,
I think Brad makes a really good point, though. It does come down to value, right? Like if Smith's willing to come back, or Talbot's willing to come back for maybe a less bonus laden deal where they don't really have much work around the NHL, and they'll come back for 1.4, 1.5 flat.
What's your cap situation like, Brad? Because I know like ours, that would help us like tremendously, right? So
we had absolutely zero until we traded for a leak last week. It had freed up 4.3.
Yeah, $4 million. Yeah, okay.
So we have that. But you know what really could put a wrench into this for both of us is, what if Koskinen and Riddick struggle down the stretch, and we have to play? You have to go with Smith down the stretch, and we have to go with Talbot down the stretch. That almost forces a re-sign, doesn't it?
It does, for sure. I mean, if it's a similar situation as, like, let's just look at Smith, for instance, as you guys last year, where he was your playoff goalie, he had a great series. And if that happens for the Oilers, I agree. I think you've got to re-sign him at that point. Like, you're not giving him term at his age, but you're giving him a year for sure. Like, yeah. I think you've almost got to.
I think we got a good stopgap for both our teams, really. And that, I mean, I think
we do. And both teams, you know, like we're looking at, you know, you look way back like a decade ago, and you're coming off the Kieprasov and the Rolison eras. And both teams have kind of struggled to find that long-term guy. And like you said, maybe we have found that stopgap where this gives you 2 to 3 years to, one, figure out, I mean, Riddick's a lot younger than Koskinen is. Maybe Riddick is your long-term guy. Maybe he continues to develop, but maybe he's not, and he just fills in for 2 or 3 years, and that gives you some time to work on those goalie prospects or make some trades for some younger guys and hope they develop. But one of the things I know we're running a little bit long here, Brad, but in closing, one of the things I've got to ask you, so as far as you mentioned the Frolik move clearing up, sorry, that was 4.2?
4.3.
Okay.
So
that's got to look, I mean, you guys got a 4th round pick back. So you look at that, and obviously, I mean, Calgary's not a rebuilding team, so that 4th round pick is, I mean, good, but nothing in the immediate
that was
future.
Just a bonus, because
exactly, you're dumping salary.
Cap clear, yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So that's gotta, I mean, you look at a team like us where we're both, as much as we wish we were in better situations, we're both bubble teams right now. Mm-hmm. So that's got to put the Calgary Flames in a position to be buyers with that cap space freed up. I'm not saying that they're going to go after some huge superstar, but they're probably going to be adding at the deadline, as are we most likely. What do you think this team really needs? I mean, there's been a lot of rumors swirling with Johnny Gaudreau. I'm not suggesting you guys trade him this year, but what does this team need to maybe make that cup run if this is a year they're going to do that?
Top 6 winger. Mm-hmm. And Treliving's been very matter of fact that he's going to spend the money, but he's also wants to do it he would prefer not doing it on a rental.
Right.
He'd like to get a bigger guy, a bigger top 6 winger that's going to have some term. So it's not just a one and out, you know?
Right.
We'll see. I think he's working on things. I mean, it's just going to take some time. If I had to put money on who I think it will be, I don't know. My gut tells me Tyler Toffoli.
Okay. I had fingers crossed that it wasn't Andreas Athanasiou, to be honest, because that's who I really want for the Oilers. So
John has a hard on for him.
I do. Yeah. I'm wild about Andreas, but it's funny though, because you made the similarity comparison with our goaltenders, and it is interesting to look at our teams. I mean, we're probably looking for the same thing around the deadline. Another top 6 winger for the Oilers to give. Even like you look at Neal's been up on the first line, which is something we probably should have mentioned earlier. He'll most likely be there on Saturday as well. But just to get that flexibility in your lineup, right? Adding another guy where if a James Neal or if one of your wingers in the top 6 isn't performing, you can drop them to the 3rd line, right? And not just have to have those bottom 6 guys that you're like, maybe this guy will be a top 6 guy. And it is interesting. I mean, I could see, like, Kyle, do you think the Oilers are looking at adding anything else, or is top 6, top 9 winger got to be for sure first on the list, but anything else Holland might look at?
I mean, I think that really depends over how we play over the next month and a half, 2 months here before the trade deadline, right? Like, if the Oilers can play the same way that they did at the beginning of the season, then yeah, we're probably looking for more than just a top 6 winger.
Well, you guys are tight on cap though, right?
We are, so you've got to look at something that's going
moving probably high paying defenseman out. I don't know, and
the unfortunate thing is like a lot of people still rip on the Chris Russell contract, and obviously Flames fans are familiar. I love Chris Russell.
I love Chris Russell.
I do too, but he's the obvious one where it's like if you're bringing a guy in that's making
$3 to $4
million, he's the one going out. He's the most expendable.
But you also have to pair
money.
him with something else, right? And it comes into that question if we want to bargain our future on just this year, which I really don't think it is worth it. Unless you're bringing back that winger that's a multiple year, just like Brad said, is what they need, right? It's not just a 1 year investment, fucking one and done.
I don't think either one of our teams should blow it all for this.
I don't think so either. I don't think either one of our GMs are probably going to do it.
I don't think so either.
And the only thing that's slightly enticing is the situation of the Pacific, but you've already seen a team like Arizona go all in, right, with Taylor Hall. So it's like, yeah, I mean, we're the weakest division in hockey. Maybe this is your year, but that doesn't guarantee you a Stanley Cup by any means either, right?
No.
Like it's really like just because you're in a good division, that helps you, or a bad division, helps you make the playoffs.
Helps you get a spot.
Helps you win a round or two, but it doesn't help you win it at the end of the day.
How many teams have you seen go all in and win a cup? I mean, seriously, most
Looking
of the teams.
Columbus last year.
Yeah, I was going to say Columbus.
I mean, most of the teams that win the cup are solid and good all year.
Yeah, they're teams. They're like teams. Like they play as a team.
And everyone likes to compare their team that's struggling to the St. Louis Blues of last year. But for one, it's a huge one-off.
That's not going to happen.
You look at their team, and they had a solid team that just didn't really figure it out until halfway through the year, right? Like you look at their roster, and they sucked for the first half of the year, but they were on paper a very good team still.
Hey, you guys, Tampa Bay sucked the first half of this year.
Yeah.
And now
they're
look
a contender for sure. Yeah.
But I think that's good for them, right? Like that's what they needed.
Well, and I'm not trying to. Calgary has not been good the first half of the year. The question I have is, did they overachieve last year? Or are they just starting to find their way and are going to be a powerhouse down the stretch? I don't know. I don't know. If I had to guess, we overachieved last year a little bit. Because, I mean, we had so many guys have career years.
Right.
That's hard to replicate year in and year out.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of playoffs just comes to getting in and being hot at the right time, right? Like,
that's right.
You can be a team that just squeaks in and just being a team that's just literally just gets your fire at the right time. And
I mean, look at both of our last cup runs, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. I was going to say, our last cup run, we were at 8 seed.
Oilers or Flames are winning the cup this year, right? Look at St. Louis of last year. I mean, I know that's kind of cherry picking because we all agreed that's a one-off, but at the end of the day, you got to get hot.
Scary, though. There's a lot of people that had Calgary as a cup contender this year.
But similar, Brad, to when the Oilers made the playoffs in 2017 and they made it 2 rounds, next year, it was, Oilers are cup favorites at the start of the year. It's like,
they were.
I'm an Oilers fan and I'm not putting money on that. That's for sure.
I know I didn't. I was like, I seen what Chiarelli did. Absolutely fucking nothing.
And
so,
I mean, I was expecting a better year than happened already. I thought they were going to improve, but it's always that, the ebbs and flows, right? Like teams are kind of a roller coaster and you see that happen, but it will be, I know we're going to wrap it up here, but I'm very excited for the second half of the year here. We've been wrapping it up for like 20 minutes, but
yeah, we're going to break a Hockey Podcast Network length of episode, but that's okay.
Yeah, they're like, hey, try and do 45 minutes. You're like, here's a 2.5 hour episode.
Well, it's tough to keep Battle of Alberta talk short and it seems like when we get talking, we get off on tangents and we
you go everywhere.
More goaltending today than I ever had dreamed that we'd talk, but that's okay.
Absolutely. But no, I think we're all good unless anybody else has a question that we can talk about for 20 more minutes.
Let's finish right here and we'll save it for the next episode, which I'm sure we'll have with Brad here. So
for sure.
Let's just hope we have a good game on Saturday night.
I don't want to get shit talked again by you. So
I took it easy.
I'm just kidding. No, I gave you props. Yeah.
I might fire some tweets off if things get ugly though.
Brad, if you don't mind, if we can do a little plug here. We are giving away tickets to the February 21st game against the Minnesota Wild. Unfortunately, not a Battle of Alberta, but figured since you guys are obviously a Calgary Flames podcast, you might have some Edmonton fans there. Kyle, let's do a second code word, I guess. So we'll just do Battle of Alberta. Yeah. if anybody's stayed with us for this hour and a half long episode, they can get a second entry in. And Flames fans, we don't discriminate. If you're a Flames fan living in Edmonton or wanting to make the 3-hour drive up the Highway 2, feel free, send in that code word to us on Twitter. And thank you, Brad, for letting us plug that. Sorry to randomly throw that in there.
No, that's great. Thank you guys for everything. And we will talk next Battle of Alberta, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks, Brad. Yeah. As always, it's a pleasure, man.
This is the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk on every team in the NHL.
All right, time for a little Calgary Flames news. That was a great interview with those guys. I sure like those guys. Even though they're Oilers guys, I still like them. They're good guys. Good guys. Always fun to rib each other, give each other a hard time. You know, we all say how much we dislike the Oilers and everything like that, but how good is that rivalry? How good is it? I mean, as we talked on the interview, we want the Oilers to lose, but we really want them to be relevant, or it's not really any fun. Wouldn't it be something if we met in the playoffs this year? Oh my gosh, how good would that be? Anyways, dad's trip. Great day Monday for the players and their dads. They got to go to Wrigley Field in Chicago. Got to look at some Cubs history. Got to go out onto the field. Got to hit some balls in the batting cage. I laughed so hard watching David Riddick hit balls. It was so funny. Guy was hilarious. Lanny McDonald, Colin Patterson are on the road trip with the fathers. It's a nice addition. Lanny McDonald, there's so much that young players can learn from him, and just what a likable guy. You can just tell he's just the greatest guy in the whole world. Elias Lindholm played his 500th game in Chicago last night. 2 goals, number 1 star, 300th point. Could you write the script any better? I don't think so. This guy has been a gamer all year for the Flames, developing into a top-line center. Every game, I feel like he gets better and better.
Every team, everywhere. The Hockey Podcast Network.
Hey, hockey fans, want to win some money? Play Playline. 50,000 daily lotto brought to you by the Hockey Podcast Network. Win big with Playline. Use promo code THPN and you're set to win big bucks. Oh yeah, it takes some hockey knowledge, but we know you got that.
Every team, everywhere. The Hockey Podcast Network.
All right, Flames fans, time for the question of the day. And I'm going to be straight up with you. I kind of ruined this one a little bit in my interview with the guys from Oil Country Podcast. I kind of spilled the beans on the question during that interview, but we'll reiterate it and go through it again. The question is, who would you start in goal Thursday night and Saturday night? Thursday night, Minnesota comes to town. Saturday night, Edmonton comes to town. Well, here's what I'd do. I'd start Talbot on Thursday night. He's been hot lately. If Talbot has a really good game, under 3 goals, 3 goals or under, Flames win, he goes again on Saturday. More than 3 goals or a loss, Riddick gets the hand on Saturday. I would also make sure I had open communication with Riddick. I think it's critical that we don't start a goalie controversy. Flames fans, don't forget, this is exactly what we wanted. We wanted Talbot to push Riddick, and we wanted them to both play well. And you know what? With the exception of a couple games on Talbot's part, and with the exception of a couple recent games on Riddick's part, it's exactly what we've got. We want this. We want good goaltenders. We want both of them to do well. And that's what we got. We need to count our blessings. Talk to Riddick. Let him know, hey, you're our guy, man. You are our number 1 guy. And we've got Talbot here supporting you. Take a break mentally, physically. You've been run hard the first half of the season. We're going to go down the stretch here, and we're going to win some hockey games. We're going to play the hot hand, and you're our man down the stretch. Talbot 5-7-0 on the season, .917 on the season. In his last 6 starts, he's 4-2-0. He's got some run support, which has helped a ton. .938 save percentage. Now, that's not too shabby. We've got a good goaltending tandem in Calgary, and we got to be very, very thankful of that. I go Talbot Thursday night against Minnesota. Let's preview that game on Thursday night as Minnesota comes to town for the 3rd meeting in just 2 weeks. Crazy. Minnesota currently sits 20-17-6, 46 points, fifth in the Central. They're 4 points out of that final wild card spot. Their last game, it was last Sunday. The 5-4 shootout loss to the Flames. They've had a few days off, and now they travel to Calgary. Calgary sits 23-17-5, 51 points. Good enough for fourth in the Pacific and the top wild card spot. Things are changing every single night in that really, really, really tight race for the wild card and the Pacific Division. Calgary's last game Tuesday night as they beat Chicago 2-1. And we'll also really don't need to preview the game, but the second battle of Alberta goes down Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, the late game, Edmonton in Calgary. The one meeting thus far, Calgary beats Edmonton 5-1, and boy, was that ever a night that we all really, really enjoyed as Flames fans. Hopefully the Flames can get it done again. Good news in Calgary, Rasmus Andersson. Boy, that made my day. Hope you enjoyed the interview with the guys from Oil Country Podcast. They're Oilers fans, but they're great guys. Fun talking with them. Hope you enjoyed the show. Check back Monday morning as the next episode 31, drops on the Hockey Podcast Network. You can also find Flames Unfiltered at flamesunfiltered.com. All kinds of Calgary Flames news and all the podcasts archived all the way back to the beginning of the season. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the Battle of Alberta. 4 more points, hopefully, next time I talk to you. Get connected. Flames Unfiltered can be found on Twitter at Flame Unfiltered. And also make sure you check out our Facebook page at Flames Unfiltered. Check out host Brad Brood on Twitter at Brad Brood. And if you like what you hear, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. You can find Flames Unfiltered on all the major podcast players. Consider subscribing to the Inside Edge Hockey News on Patreon. That'll get you exclusive content and much more. Thanks again and enjoy the hockey. Thanks for tuning in to Flames Unfiltered. Check back for more action-packed Calgary Flames talk.
You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network on Twitter at HockeyPodNet. New episodes every Monday and Thursday. Download at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from.
This has been a production of Inside Edge Hockey News Radio, brought to you by the Hockey Podcast Network. This production is copyrighted and distributed by the Inside Edge Hockey Media Group.